My name is Aurora. I was the only one at Grandma's funeral. Everyone else said she wasn't worth the effort of taking time off work. The funeral home was silent, broken only by the soft melody that echoed from hidden speakers. I sat alone in the front row, watching my grandmother's coffin adorned with a simple arrangement of white lilies, her favorite flowers. The funeral director checked his watch for the third time, then glanced at the empty chairs behind me. His eyes met mine with an uncomfortable look of pity. "Miss Smith, we usually wait 15 minutes past the scheduled time, but it's been 30. Would you like to proceed?" he asked in a compassionate, professional tone. I nodded, unable to find my own voice. The reality was crushing. I was the only one who had come. My cell phone had remained silent all morning, except for a series of text messages from my relatives, each with their own excuse. "Can't make it, important client meeting today. Send my condolences. Uncle Edward. So sorry about Grandma, but Theodore has a soccer tournament this weekend, you understand. Aunt Camila. The drive is too long and gas prices are insane right now. I'll catch the next family funeral. Cousin Samuel." And the most cutting of all, from my own sister, "Let's be real, Aurora, Grandma was difficult. No one's going to skip work for someone who barely remembered our names at the end. I have a deadline, call me next week." The ceremony proceeded with an awkward brevity. The pastor, who had never met my grandmother, uttered generic platitudes about a woman he didn't know at all. His words echoed emptily in the silent room as I clutched a worn photo album in my lap, the only thing I had taken from her apartment before her children descended like vultures to divide her belongings. When the final hymn faded, I approached the coffin alone. I placed my hand on the polished wood and whispered, "I'm here, Grandma Isadora. I remember, and I promise they will too, soon enough." The cemetery was no different. Just me, the funeral director, and two gravediggers waiting impatiently by their idling truck. After the briefest of committals, they lowered the coffin into the earth with mechanical efficiency. I tossed a single lily onto the descending casket, watching as the only person who had truly shaped my life disappeared into the ground. I drove home alone in a storm that seemed perfectly timed, my windshield wipers barely keeping pace with my tears. My phone vibrated with text messages asking if the funeral was over and if there was anything good in the will. That night, I opened my laptop and began to document everything I knew about the family fortune, the existence of which none of them even suspected, the inheritance they had all dismissed along with the woman they couldn't be bothered to honor for a single day. They would all remember Grandma Isadora very soon. I had grown up as the forgotten child in a family obsessed with status and success. My father was a high-powered lawyer who rarely came home before midnight, and my mother was too busy with charity galas and social climbing to notice my existence. My sister, Amanda, quickly learned that achievement was the only currency our parents valued, so she dedicated herself to becoming the perfect daughter, straight A's, captain of the debate team, and later, a ruthless corporate executive just like Dad. I was different, quieter, more interested in books than business. My parents saw this as weakness, but Grandma Isadora saw it as strength. Every summer, from the age of 8 until I went to college, I was sent to stay with her at her modest farmhouse in the countryside outside Aspen. My parents presented it as a punishment. Maybe manual labor will straighten her out, but those summers were my salvation. Grandma Isadora had been a math teacher before retiring to tend her gardens and beehives. The walls of her farmhouse were lined with thousands of books, and her mind was sharper than anyone I had ever met. While my cousins and sister bemoaned my banishment, I was receiving an education more valuable than any prestigious summer program they could offer. "People are temporary, Aurora," she would tell me as we tended her vegetable patch, "but the land is forever, and knowledge, that's the only true inheritance." She taught me how to grow food from seed, how to repair instead of replace, and how to see the beauty in the rhythms of nature. In the evenings, we would sit on her porch, and she would read aloud from Thoreau, Whitman, and her favorite, Mary Oliver. Afterward, she would ask questions that made me think deeply about what we had read. When I struggled with math in school, she taught me through woodworking. Measure twice, calculate angles, understand proportion and balance. When I was bullied for being different, she showed me that standing out from the crowd was something to cherish, not to fear. "Your family only values what can be counted, Aurora," she said to me once, after my father had scolded me for getting a B while Amanda was celebrated for her perfect report card. But the most important things in life cannot be counted. As I grew older, I noticed how my family treated her. They visited rarely, usually when they needed something. They called her eccentric and difficult when she refused to conform to their materialistic values. They rolled their eyes when she talked about sustainability or quoted poetry instead of stock prices at family gatherings. They talked around her, not to her. When she offered wisdom from her decades of experience, they exchanged knowing glances, as if age had made her foolish rather than wise. What they didn't know, what they never bothered to learn, was that Grandma Isadora had been quietly brilliant with her finances. Though she lived simply, she had invested early in sustainable technology companies, long before they became trendy. Her quirky interest in organic farming had led her to buy shares in what became the largest organic food producer in the country. The land they scoffed at her for tending had quadrupled in value with the development of the surrounding area. And yet, as she grew older and needed more help, the family visits became even less frequent. When she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's 3 years ago, I was the one who took her to appointments. When she could no longer live alone, I was the one who found her a quality nursing home near my own apartment so I could visit her daily. My family's excuse was always the same. We're just so busy. You have more time because your career isn't as demanding. The truth was, I had built a successful independent architecture practice specifically, so I could structure my time around caring for her. I had shaped my life around the values she had taught me, prioritizing what truly mattered. Now, sitting in my apartment the night after her solitary funeral, I realized that none of them had ever truly known her, and soon they would regret their ignorance more than they could possibly imagine. Over the past 3 years, I had noticed subtle changes in my grandmother. Despite her declining memory, she had moments of surprising clarity. In one of these moments, about 2 years ago, she called me close to her bed in the nursing home. "Aurora," she whispered, "there's a leather-bound copy of Walden on my bookshelf at home. Bring it to me next time." When I did, she opened it with trembling hands to reveal a hollowed-out section containing a small brass key and a folded document. "This is for you," she whispered. "There's a safe deposit box at Union Bank of Aspen. Everything is explained inside. Don't tell the others yet. They wouldn't understand." I had respected her wishes, visiting the bank only after her passing. Inside the box, I found detailed financial records, investment portfolios, and a letter written in her elegant, familiar handwriting from before her illness had progressed significantly. The truth was astonishing. Grandma Isadora was worth over $50 million. The family had always assumed she lived modestly because she had to. In reality, she had chosen simplicity while her investments flourished. The letter explained everything: how she had watched the family become increasingly materialistic, how she had tested them over the years by asking for their time instead of offering money, and how they had consistently failed that test. Her instructions were clear. As the executor of her will, a detail she had never shared with the family, I was to give them one last chance to show their true character. In the following weeks, I began to set the stage for her final lesson. I scheduled individual meetings with each family member, saying only that Grandma had left some personal items for them, and that I needed to discuss estate matters. My Uncle Edward was the first. He canceled twice before finally agreeing to meet me for exactly 30 minutes during his lunch break. His corner office overlooked the city, with awards and credentials covering almost every surface of the walls. "So, what did the old lady leave?" he asked bluntly, checking his watch as he sat across from me. "I hope you haven't dragged me into this meeting for sentimental trinkets. My assistant already cleared out my apartment of that stuff when she died." I kept my expression neutral. "Actually, I wanted to talk about the funeral first." He waved his hand dismissively. "Look, I had clients in town, millions on the line. She would have understood. Business comes first, always has." "Does it?" I asked softly. "When was the last time you actually spoke to her?" He shifted uncomfortably. "What's this about, Aurora?" "I'm a busy man." I placed a small box on his desk. "She wanted you to have this." Inside was a handwritten letter and a faded photograph of him at 7 years old, sitting on her lap as she read him a story. The letter read simply, "Edward, you once told me you wanted to be a teacher, to help children learn. What happened to that boy?" I miss him. With love, always, Mom. His face flushed. Is that why you called me? To make me feel guilty? She was senile at the end. She wrote that 5 years ago, I said gently, before any significant cognitive decline. What about the real stuff? He demanded, losing his composure. There must have been some actual inheritance. I stood up to leave. We'll discuss that after I've met with everyone. She left specific instructions. His expression darkened. Is this some kind of game? Because if you're manipulating this situation the same way you manipulated your way into taking care of her for the last decade. I cut him off, surprising myself with my boldness. I'll be in touch about the next meeting. Similar scenes played out with Aunt Camila and Cousin Samuel, each receiving small personal mementos of moments they had shared with Grandma, each responding with varying degrees of discomfort and thinly veiled greed. My sister, Amanda, was the most difficult. Unlike the others, she didn't even feign remorse. In her sleek, minimalist apartment, she examined the childhood bracelet Grandma had kept all these years with clinical detachment. This is useless, Aurora, she said. Grandma and I weren't close. She never approved of my choices or lifestyle, always thought I worked too hard and cared too much about money. She fixed me with that piercing stare, so like her own. She was proud of your achievements, I countered. She just worried about what they cost you, Amanda scoffed. Says the underachiever who spent her youth tending a garden with an old woman instead of building a future. Let's cut to the chase. Did she leave anything of real value, or was the inheritance as empty as her funeral? The words stung, but I maintained my composure. There will be a family meeting this Saturday at her farmhouse. Everyone needs to be there. I have plans, cancel them, she said firmly. This is your last opportunity to honor her wishes. If you choose not to come, you forfeit any claim to what she left. She narrowed her eyes. So, there is something worth having? I simply smiled and left, knowing she would be there. They all would. The following Saturday, I arrived early at Grandma's farmhouse. The property looked beautiful in the summer light, her garden still thriving thanks to the local teenager I had hired to maintain it after she moved to the nursing home. The old place has good bones, as she used to say. One by one, they arrived. Uncle Edward in his luxury SUV, Aunt Camila and her husband in their pristine sedan, Cousin Samuel reluctantly hitching a ride with them. Amanda was last, pulling up in her sports car, sunglasses firmly in place despite the gathering clouds. They gathered awkwardly in the living room, none of them quite sure how to interact in this space, so filled with memories they had chosen to ignore. Family photos lined the walls. Holidays, birthdays, graduations, moments when they had briefly fulfilled their familial duty before retreating to their separate lives. Thank you all for coming. I began, standing near the fireplace where a portrait of Grandma in her younger years hung. Before we discussed the inheritance, Grandma Isadora left one request. She asked that each of us share a memory of her, something personal that meant something to us. The silence that followed was deafening. This is ridiculous, Amanda finally said. We're adults. Can we skip the sentimental games? It's not a game, I replied evenly. It's a last request from a woman who raised all of us in different ways. If you can't think of a single meaningful memory to share, perhaps that says something about why we're in this situation. Uncle Edward cleared his throat. I remember she taught me how to fish summer of '79. I caught a trout, and she showed me how to clean and cook it. He looked momentarily nostalgic before his expression hardened again. But we need to be practical here. What are the assets? The house obviously needs work, but the land could be valuable for development. Camila looked horrified. You can't develop this land. It's been in the family for generations. It was the first hint that someone besides me cared about Grandma's legacy. Oh, now you care about family history? Amanda sneered. Where was this sentiment when she needed a ride to her doctor's appointments? The meeting quickly devolved into accusations and old resentments bubbling to the surface. I let them argue for a few minutes before quietly placing a document on the coffee table. The bickering ceased as all eyes turned to the paper. What's this? Cousin Samuel asked, leaning forward. Grandma Isadora's net worth statement as of last month, I said simply. As the executor of her will, I've spent the last few weeks organizing everything. Uncle Edward snatched the paper, his eyes widening as he read. He passed it without a word to Amanda, whose composure finally cracked. $58 million? She whispered, her voice suddenly small. That's impossible. She was an excellent investor, I explained. She lived simply by choice, not necessity. The sustainable energy companies she backed early on, the organic farming initiatives you all scoffed at, the land she preserved instead of developing. It all paid off exponentially. Why didn't she tell us? Aunt Camilla asked, tears forming in her eyes. Whether it was from remorse or missed opportunity, I couldn't tell. She told you in her own way, I replied. She talked about her investments constantly, about the future of sustainable technology, about the value of the land. No one listened because you had already decided she had nothing valuable to say. I handed each of them an envelope. Her will is very specific. These letters explain her decisions. They tore open the envelopes with the eagerness they should have shown for her wisdom when she was alive. As they read, I watched their expressions shift from anticipation to shock, and then to dismay. Grandma had indeed left them inheritances, but with conditions. For Uncle Edward, she had left $1 million earmarked for the creation of a scholarship fund for underprivileged children, which he would help manage while volunteering weekly at a literacy program. For Aunt Camilla, she had left her collection of rare first editions and a substantial donation to the local library in Camilla's name, with the stipulation that Camilla participate in the weekly reading program it would now sponsor. Cousin Samuel received the vintage car he had always admired, along with funding to complete his abandoned degree, on the condition that he mentor younger students. And for Amanda, perhaps the most pointed legacy, shares in an ethical investment fund worth several million, to remain in trust until she completed 1 year of weekly volunteer work at the nursing home where Grandma had spent her final years. This is manipulative and possibly not even legal, Amanda said, her voice trembling. She can't control us from the grave. The will has been reviewed by 3 different law firms, I replied calmly. It's airtight. You can contest it, of course, but the alternative is clearly stated. They all flipped to the second page of their letters, where the same paragraph appeared. If you choose not to accept these terms, your portion will be added to the community foundation being established in my name, which will support the causes I valued throughout my life. The choice is yours. Receive your inheritance while growing as a person, or reject both. What about you? Uncle Edward demanded. What did you get for being her favorite? I looked around at the beloved farmhouse, at the land that had given me sanctuary during my youth. This place, I said simply, and the joy of seeing her legacy honored properly. I let that sink in for a moment before continuing. There's one more thing she wanted you to see. I opened my laptop and played a video recording from 6 months prior, one of Grandma's lucid days. Her face appeared on the screen, thin but smiling, her eyes still bright with intelligence. My dearest family, she began. If you're watching this, then I'm gone and Aurora is carrying out my wishes. I want you to know that I loved each of you deeply, even when you couldn't find the time for me. Money was never what mattered most in life, though I suspect by now you've learned I had more than you thought. She paused to adjust her glasses, a gesture so familiar it made my throat tighten. What matters is how we treat each other when there seems to be nothing to gain. Aurora was the only one who consistently passed that test. She gave me her time when I had nothing to offer but my company. The rest of you, she sighed deeply, chose differently, but I believe in second chances. I've structured my legacy not as a punishment, but as an opportunity, a final gift to help you become the people I always knew you could be. Whether you accept it is your choice. I hope you choose wisely. I love you all. The video ended, leaving the room in profound silence. No one spoke for several minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. Amanda was the first to rise, wiping away tears I hadn't seen her shed in years. Without a word, she walked out the door. Uncle Edward followed soon after, his shoulders slumped. Aunt Camilla hesitated, looking around the house as if seeing it for the first time. She was remarkable, wasn't she? She said softly. We really missed out. Yes, I agreed, but she's given you a chance to see it now. In the following months, transformations occurred that I wouldn't have believed possible. Amanda began her volunteer work reluctantly at first, then with growing engagement. During our monthly check-ins, She shared stories of the elderly residents she was meeting, admitting that many reminded her of Grandma. Uncle Edward threw himself into the scholarship program with unexpected enthusiasm. His business acumen actually proved invaluable in maximizing its impact. Aunt Camilla discovered a passion for literature that had lain dormant since college, and Cousin Samuel finally completed his degree. As for me, I renovated the farmhouse, retaining its character but making it more sustainable. I expanded the gardens and opened them up for community education programs. I continued my work as an architect, but now with a focus on green building and affordable housing, merging my skills with Grandma's values. A year after the funeral, we gathered again at the farmhouse, this time for a celebration of Grandma Isidora's birthday. The atmosphere couldn't have been more different. There was genuine conversation, laughter, and surprisingly little mention of money. As evening fell, we sat on the porch where Grandma had taught me about poetry, stars, and the things that truly matter. Amanda joined me after the others had gone inside. "You knew all along, didn't you?" she asked quietly. "About the money, about what she was trying to teach us." I shook my head. I knew she had investments, but not the extent. I just knew her, which was worth more than any financial knowledge. Amanda was silent for a long moment. "I missed out on so much," she finally said. "We all did. For a few more hours at the office, a few more deals, a little more status. But you're here now," I reminded her. That would have mattered most to her. Above us, the stars emerged in the clear aspen sky, the same stars Grandma had named for me during those precious childhood summers. I thought of her last journal entry, which I had found among her papers. My greatest assets were never in the bank. They were in the garden, in the books, in the quiet moments with those I loved. Aurora understood. I hope one day the others will too. They finally understood, Grandma. But I was still the only one at your funeral, and I will never forget that. What did you think of Aurora's story? Did you identify with her? Tell us in the comments below. Like and share this video to move more people, and subscribe to the channel to support us.